Australia has over 10,000 beaches. You could visit a new beach every day for over 27 years.
Fucking sick.
Yeah,
I'm trying to do that.
That is pretty crazy. Well, this is the first episode. Welcome to Journal Prompts. So I'll give you guys a little heads up of how this podcast is going to work. Yes, I'm going to open every single one with the random fact that I found on the internet because I find that different. I think everyone has music intros, and I'm going to have fact intros. Now, I'll be bringing on a guest every single time. So today I actually have my sister.
Yo.
Welcome on, Dan. I love the yo.
I'm happy to be here. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I love to journal.
So basically what we're going to be doing is just talking about a journal prompt the whole entire time. Now, I don't even know the journal prompt. I kind of want to, make this a little bit harder for myself
In the moment.
and just hear the journal prompt, and whatever comes to my mind, just go into it from there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that'll let me dissect my brain a little bit more, because if I knew it from the day before, I can prepare and I won't go through all my thoughts and my progressions to get to the point where I finally answer the whole question. So, all right, Dan, let me hear the journal prompt.
All right. How do you cope with most mistakes? Is there any specific mistake you haven't made peace with yet?
Ooh.
Boom. Mic drop.
Okay,
Yeah, right?
just repeat that.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you repeat it, I'm going to give a whole minute to the listeners, to you guys, whoever's listening right now. I'm going to give you guys a whole minute so you guys can think about it, and then we'll start talking.
Okay. So, how do you cope with most mistakes? Is there any specific mistake you have not made peace with yet?
How do I cope with mistakes? Okay, so basically what I go through, if I'm making a mistake in something, it really depends on the mistake. If I'm looking at a mistake where I honestly just didn't realize something and it was my first time ever doing it. Like, I'll give you an example. So the other day I was walking Jeej. Jeej is our dog. And when I was walking her, there was a guy sitting on his front porch, but he couldn't see us coming.
Mm-hmm.
So when we walked by, he had a big ass dog. Like, this dog,
Oh, shit.
like, this dog wanted to just play. And he was like prime, like literally in his prime of, are you okay?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're sick.
Yep.
Yeah. So, like, this dog's in his prime. Like, he wants to just run and run and run. And then Jeez walks by.
Yeah, and she's all like, old lady.
And then, like, they looked at each other, and the dog was just like, play! And then just, like, jumped on Jeej and stuff. And the guy, like, it wasn't the guy's mistake. Like, he couldn't see us coming.
Right.
That's an honest mistake.
Right.
That's how I look at it.
Did they have fun?
No, Jeej was just like, what are you doing, bro? Like,
Yeah, she's
I was
like,
just trying to sniff.
why are you sniffing me so intensely? Like, I can't keep up with you. Stop.
Yeah, so that's how I look at, like, honest mistakes, where you didn't see something. He definitely could have prepared for it a little bit
Right.
better. But, I mean, who's walking their dog on a random Tuesday afternoon at, like, 1 o'clock?
Anyone.
Anyone,
Literally anyone.
Anyone could. It's more of... Okay, I get it. Yeah, anyone could be. But that to me is like an honest mistake.
Yes.
Where he didn't realize it, and like it sucks. Like you wish you could go back in time.
Right.
But now there is a different type of scenario where he knows Gigi's coming down. Like if this was an everyday thing,
Right.
I'm going to hold the dog back today because I saw what happened. And that's kind of how you have to differentiate your different mistakes, because a lot of people get really hard on themselves because a lot of people get hard on them. And we have a lot better memories. Like I always compare us to animals, because if you look, like if you look at a dog, they make a mistake. Like they're barking at you when they know they shouldn't be, and then
Silly guys.
yeah. Dogs are mad cute.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah, but when they realize that they fucked up, they're like, oh, I'm sorry. And then they don't remember it. They remember in the back of their mind when they're about to do the mistake again, but they're like, I'm not going to dwell on this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to just sit here and be like, oh man, I fucked up. Like this sucks. I hate that I did this to myself. And that's what happens. That's where a lot of anxiety and depression comes from, because people are very hard critics on other people.
Yeah.
And it sucks. Like when you have a very hard critic always down your back, like strict parents, my parents are going to kill me. What'd you get on the test? I got an 89. They're going to kill you for an 89? Are you serious?
They should be happy.
Like they should be happy. They should be like, hey, like those 2 questions, just go over it.
Exactly.
Like it's not good.
Mistakes.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because like tests really fuck you up. Well, me personally, because I know the stuff. I know how to do it. I just, in that situation, I kind of fold under pressure sometimes. Like I'm like, oh, is this what you're supposed to do next? Or like for math equations, like there's very specific rules. And when you miss one rule, sometimes it could screw up the whole equation and stuff. That's why in college they were kind of pretty cool with everything, because my professor would be like, okay, I see that you got step 1, step 2, and step 3 done. You just missed 4 through 9. And I'm like, yeah, bro. Like,
fuck me, right? 4 through 9 was the entire rest of the question. Yeah, it's just fine. I'll fail.
Yo, it's tough sometimes. But yeah, like I think tests, like if you get 70% of the test correct, that's still like basically saying you have 7 out of 10 questions correct. Like that, I think in my opinion, if you get half or more correct, like that's actually pretty good ratio. But in school system, they want you to be perfect. Why? I don't know. It's stupid.
No one's perfect, and that's why you make mistakes.
Yeah,
that's how
Mike
learn how to cope with mistakes.
Yeah.
That's why you learn, so that you can continue to move on and grow.
Yeah, but I think that's the reason why in school they force you to remember those.
Harp on it.
Yeah, because you look at your GPA and you're like, oh, I'm only a 3.0 student. Like there's so many other 4.0 students, and it kind of dwells on you. You're like, oh, like I made a bunch of mistakes, little mistakes, and I don't know. I just don't think you get another chance to fix them, and that's where people get screwed up in their mind. They're like, oh, I don't have another chance to fix my mistakes right now. Like that was it. That was the test. I can't go back. I could do the test corrections. That's my homework.
Right.
It's not like I could go back and do the test corrections and then get the 100.
Get the better grade, yeah.
What they should do for the test corrections, they should actually force you to...
Nick is triggered.
Yeah, I am triggered. They should force you to go back to class, retake those questions with like different... kind of like a different way. Like for example, like if it was like a geography thing, do like the same type of questions but in a different format or something, and then like they're coming and you can prepare for it. Like sometimes they just give you too much shit to prepare for.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So I feel like most of my mistakes, like I've never...
Well, that's just like the surface of mistakes, but you could go.
I never really dwelled on like, oh, I got a bad grade. It's cool. Like I'm still a good person. Like, you know what I mean? If I get a bad grade, I'm like...
so true. Like, they make you feel like a bad person.
And
like,
I'm not.
Like, yo, you got a 68? Are you kidding me?
Exactly. And I'm like, yo, wait, I'm still the exact same person from the beginning of when I walked into this classroom to when I walked out. I just got a bad grade, and that's okay. Like, that means I need to obviously study more, or I really don't understand the material, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, anything like that, I was never triggered. You know, it never was like, oh, fuck, I did really bad. Now, I went to school for vocal performance. I went to Brooklyn College. I was in the conservatory.
You went to Brooklyn College?
I wish you could see our face.
Yeah, one day we'll be very big with this podcast, so we'll have cameras. But you'll probably be living in a different country.
At that point.
Yeah.
One would hope. But what was I saying? Weed brain, sorry.
You were talking about how you're like still the same person. Like you just need to study a little bit more, or you don't get the right material taught to you in the correct way.
Exactly. And I think that for the school aspect, yes, there's a lot that harps on it, but I think that even more mistakes happen after school, any kind of school. And like a lot of the mistakes that I've found myself making were either doing some sketchy shit with some shady people, or like fucking some really sketchy people, and you know, constantly doing that and getting yourself into trouble, and then the next morning waking up and trying to convince yourself for 2 hours like, nah, it's cool. Like, you woke up on the floor of an art studio with some random guy next to you, but like, it's cool. Like,
it's cool.
You'll get past it, right? And then you're like walking around all day with this like cloud like looming over you. Like, who was that guy? I don't even know his name. You know?
But but that's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
That's what society pushes you to do.
Well, yeah, of course.
They're like, oh, one night stand, go have fun. You're young.
Right, but then you wake up and they're like, oh my God, you don't even know his name? So
like, I don't remember a lot of shit from
exactly. So for me, coping with those mistakes. So for me, learning how to cope with those mistakes of, you know, sleeping with random people or having one night stands was learning to understand that they weren't mistakes. They were just these little speed bumps or hiccups that, you know, you go through to understand your life story, and that's okay. But it makes you notice what are real mistakes. And for me, one of the mistakes that I've noticed now that time has went on is that I had a friendship with somebody for so long, and then I just disappeared because we were at the point that she wasn't hearing me out anymore, and I didn't want to continue to get hurt, but she didn't understand that.
People don't take it well.
Yeah, and for me, I would be putting myself in a position of hurt again.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So as much as I see it as a mistake for myself, I recognize that not telling her why I don't want to be her friend is a mistake, because that's hard for her now. Mm-hmm. She has to look back and be like, well, why don't you want to be my friend?
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, well, I'm going to be put in the hurt situation because she never heard me out. Mm-hmm. So it's always a one-way street.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to hear me after almost 15 years of being friends if you haven't heard me at any other time? Mm-hmm. So to cope with that, I remind myself, I'm a good person. Mm-hmm. If I get the chance to ever tell her, I will.
But that was like the first time you were in that situation, though.
First time I was ever in that situation. I never had anybody treat me that way that was so close to me.
And that's an honest mistake right there.
Right. I learned from it. Well, now I've had years to reflect on it and be like, well, I wish I could have done it this way. Mm-hmm. But for my feelings at the time, I couldn't. Because I was like, I'm just going to put myself through more hurt. And why am I going to do that for you?
Yeah. It's rough reflecting on stuff like this. It really is. Like, to get it off your mind.
Trying to reflect on mistakes can be so heart-wrenching because...
I like how you did.
Oh, the little...
Yeah. Like, oh, that's a screwdriver right there, actually.
I made the little noise.
A wrench, you actually, go, 360.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you see how much I use tools? Okay. Well,
yeah, I don't really use them that often either. Oh, yeah, we got a bunch
We got
right
a
there.
whole shit ton.
Mediocre Bill.
I was just shut up. So I think that when it comes to coping with heavy mistakes and self-reflecting, it is heart-wrenching because you start to notice things about yourself. Like, I sat there and I was like, wait a minute, am I a bad person? And then I had to make like a mental note. No, you're not a bad person. You've just made some stupid, or rather, instead of using the word stupid, use silly. You've made some silly mistakes. I was young at the time, and would I do that to someone now? No, I would let them know why I don't want to be their friend. I would communicate more. But back then, I was also thinking about everybody else in the group. Because I was so young, I was thinking about, oh my God, everybody else is probably thinking this about me and saying that about me. And they think this about me now, so they say things like that. You get what I'm saying? Like, A happened, so now B is going to happen. And that can spiral into, like, the snowball effect, and you'll be anxious for days.
Yeah.
Because you haven't figured out how to tell yourself, I made one single mistake.
But now it's like, I'm looked at like I'm the worst person in the
But
world.
I've also made 1,000 mistakes, to be honest with you.
Everyone has.
I've made so many countless mistakes of, I've made countless mistakes of people literally being like, oh, hey, I have to tell you something. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah,
and then,
okay, that's like the worst thing to ever tell somebody.
Yeah, is don't tell
anybody.
anybody.
If you say don't tell anybody, don't tell me. Just don't.
Just don't tell me.
Like, everyone wants to talk and talk about different situations. I'm obviously going to tell somebody else if I have people to tell. That's the thing.
Right,
like,
right.
If you're in a group situation, like if somebody told me something and I was like, yo, honestly, bro, like you go to college like 3 hours away, I'm probably never going to tell anybody who knows about this situation. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's so crazy because coping with mistakes, I definitely had trouble when I was a lot younger. I mean, I'm talking like I'm 35.
See,
I'm 20.
Like, I feel like there are a lot of life mistakes that, like, I've dropped out of college twice now. Mm-hmm. Are they mistakes?
No.
I don't believe so. Have I made mistakes, though, throughout my college career? Yes.
Yeah, you make a mistake every day.
Information, I've actually still, to this point, I still have to officially withdraw from the College of Staten Island.
Yo, me too. I just dropped my classes.
Dude, it's
so much easier. Like, you might as well.
Well, the thing is, I've unofficially withdrawn like years ago. But the problem is I never officially did it.
Wait, so how do you unofficially do it? Like how I did, just drop your classes and that's it?
Yeah, like I never went to the school and dropped everything with somebody, you know, at the computer and whatever, ABC, XYZ. So you might be unofficially as well. So now that is technically a mistake. Now for you, who probably doesn't have a bad GPA, it doesn't matter. For somebody like me, who the mistakes that I made when I was at the College of Staten Island were skipping literally every single class I had. Because after like the first couple of weeks, I didn't want to go anymore. One of my first mistakes at the College of Staten Island was going to the College of Staten Island. Because I chose classes that really didn't interest me. I chose classes that I knew I needed to take for my degree, and I just wanted to get that shit done with. And it did not give me any willpower to push through. So that was my first mistake. Then I was skipping all my classes. Second mistake. I made friends that were skipping the classes. Third mistake.
Wait, in the same class?
In the same damn
How
class.
did you guys, how'd you meet friends so quickly like that?
Basically, we were all walking in late, looking at each other like, wait a minute. If you're not in there, and I'm not in there, and there's like 10 of us standing outside, and we're like, wait, none of us are going in, we'll smoke together instead.
And just chill and get to know each other.
And that was actually a lot nicer than going to class because I made like connections with people that I'm like, I would have never spoken to you. Like you sat in the all the way in the back of the classroom. I would have never spoken to you a day in this semester. But because we were both fucking cutting class, here we are. And it wasn't cutting class because
you just get there late.
I would get there late, but also the sheer fact that none of us wanted to be in it. Like we were taking classes that really didn't get our brain going. Mm-hmm. And I think that's another thing with college is that we all pick majors that it ends up being a mistake. When I went to Brooklyn College and I was in the conservatory, that wasn't a mistake to me. I loved going to school then. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did I cut classes? All the time. I'm the queen of it. Mm-hmm. But that's besides the point. That was mistakes because that definitely fucked me in classes where my professors are like, I mean, you do great. They're like, but bro, where are you? You know? Now, I had to be present for a lot of my classes because, again, I was a vocal performance major. So, I mean, there's only 12 kids in each class.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to show up because they notice. And I would get up on stage sometimes and I would sing, man. And people after class would be like, that was amazing. And then I'd see my professor and they would just look me up and down like so disappointed because I would mess up a part and I'd know it and I'd make that mistake.
Yo, okay, yeah.
When I came off the stage and would listen to how the crowd reacts, that's how I would make peace with my mistakes. Ooh. If my crowd was still pleased, even though I knew I messed up some notes, even though the accompaniment knew that I messed up some notes, and my professor, I could make peace with it internally before I got yelled at by my professor, because music is very cutthroat.
Yeah.
So that's how I would do it. Now, there were times when mom and dad came to see me perform, and I royally fucked up my notes. And they would be like, oh my God, you did absolutely amazing. Mommy'd be like, I was crying. It was beautiful. And I would be so angry, so upset because they were my parents. So I could show them my true emotion. I'd be like, my professor said this to me right outside of the curtain. And they were like, I thought you practiced this a million times. Like you had it yesterday. What happened while you were up there? And, you know, I choked in the moment and I skipped a couple of notes. And it's not the first time it happened, and it wouldn't be the last time that it happened. No one's perfect.
Yeah.
And then we would go out to eat, because, you know, that's something that you do after you perform. You go out to eat or whatever. And mom and dad would be so excited, and I would literally be such a grump. Like, oh, I'm so upset. Like, it's going to reflect in my grade, yada, yada. And then I started realizing, like, the more and more that mom and dad came to see me perform, it was like, wait a minute. Like, people love the way I sing. People love the way I perform. Like, just because I screwed up a little part and I did make some other people upset by screwing up doesn't mean that I can't continue this beautiful career. And that is something that I have been working with since I left Brooklyn College in like 2016-ish, because one of my biggest mistakes was my voice.
Yeah.
To me, not being able to sing classical music is one of my biggest mistakes and regrets. But the more I've gotten into my yoga practice and the more I've gotten into spiritual chanting, the more I've gotten into...
Yeah, you think you would be into yoga like this or like any spiritual stuff if you haven't like stopped singing?
I really had to get into it more. You know, I stopped singing. I was using a lot more drugs than I ever had been. And that was my coping mechanism for all my mistakes at the time. It was drugs, you know, it was hard drugs too. And, you know, it happens to a lot of people, and that's not to be ashamed of it.
Yeah.
I've moved past it, and I'm thankful for that. But my yoga practice and my spirituality also needed to come back because I was so deep into my drug use, so deep into depression. I then
Yeah.
had to go on medication. I did move back home. And a lot weighed on me that I needed my spiritual practice from yoga that I had gotten in high school. I started practicing yoga my sophomore year. So my sophomore, junior, and senior, I was avidly practicing yoga. But then when I went to college, I was not avidly practicing yoga or meditation at all.
Yeah.
So after leaving college, I was like, oh my goodness, like I am so lost. I feel so disconnected. So yes, yoga and spirituality has genuinely helped me cope with the mistakes that I've made.
Yeah, honestly, I think meditation really helped me.
Yeah.
Because every single day I have a class or a client or I'm working a party, and now I'm emceeing the party. So, honestly, emceeing and making and doing the classes, it's honestly like you're affecting people's days.
Oh yeah.
If they're having a bad day and you can give them a bomb ass class, or you know, the parents are skeptical about having a party there and you rock the party, like you feel so much better. But when you do it and it's not as good as you know, like sometimes I'll mess up words. Like I'm still in that point where, you know, when I'm speaking on the mic in front of people, I'll still like mess up words here and there. Or with the workouts, like I'll put an exercise in and I'm like, all right, let's try it out, and it doesn't work that well for the certain people, because I picture a lot of people, I'm like, yo, you could definitely do this. But since they weren't there and it was different people, like the same thing with you, mommy and daddy were like, oh my god, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Like I could tell you that like that girl over there and that girl over there, they're going home and they were not pushed to their limit. I know it.
Yeah,
I could sense it and I can see it too. And that's what fucks me up a lot, because I have so many classes, and then you can see it too, like your classes go up and down, and then when you are doing really well with your classes but you don't get as many people, it's harder to grind that back up, because you're like, I'm doing everything that I can right now, so it fucks with your confidence and shit. And like you make those little tiny mistakes and people don't think you're as good as other people, and then that gets in your head. So I think meditation really helps me. I don't do it every single day, because there are days like today I didn't have enough time. But what?
I know my mistake that I haven't made peace with.
Oh,
okay, wait.
I don't think I have one.
Okay, I totally have one. This is a totally inappropriate, and I'm saying it anyway. You can cut it out if you want. Okay? Just letting you know.
What does it have to do with like sex or something?
Okay. When I dated that kid, Paul Limoncelli, right? The last 2 weeks we were together, I didn't want to be together. And I gave that fucking hand job. Listen,
okay,
karma
that's not
is
bad.
real. Okay?
Yeah.
I gave the worst, and it wasn't like a bad hand job, but hand jobs are just fucking weird. So I gave a handy dandy to some kid at college, and I was still dating that kid, Paul. It was like 4 days before we broke up, and I swear to you, for years after that hand job, when bad things used to happen to me, I'd be like, yo, karma's a bitch. I'm still getting karma for that hand job. And that is a mistake that I made so young. I dated him. We started dating when we were 13. That was so young. And we dated until we were 17. Still very, very young.
Yeah.
And so for me, my judgment at the time was, I'm going to make me happy. And that was what made me happy. That stupid fucking handy dandy made me happy. So there I was. And that is something that I wish so badly I could go back to 17-year-old me and be like, honey, that's so silly. Like, you knew, I was so conscious of the moment, and I did it anyway. And that was really one of my first times being like, I know I'm hurting someone else, and I could give a shit less. And I think that had a lot to do with, at the time...
Wait, did he find out?
I literally told him.
Oh.
Yeah, instead of me like...
brushing it over?
Yeah... You know me. Actually, I
yeah.
think he might have asked too.
Yeah, you do feel like guilty if you don't get it out.
See, but it wasn't even that I felt guilty. It was just that karma was following me so bad. I was like, listen, I need to tell you something. But yeah, I mean, for years after that, I was like, oh my God. And see the way I still act about it now?
Yeah.
I get revved up.
Yeah.
That stupid hand job.
And you told me that you wouldn't get like this because you're sick. Up.
I know, but it's the handy dandy. Here it is. And so
the handy dandy.
So, I just think that as the time has went on for me, I've been able to look back at myself and my God, I am so interesting with the mistakes that I make. You know, one day I'm super conscious of, yo, hey, listen, I love all people and everybody deserves a chance. And then the next day, I'm screaming in someone's face because I'm like, just get the fuck out of my face. You're annoying me. You're in my way. Like, just leave. And then 10 minutes later, you're like, wait a minute. I don't know what's going on in that person's life. Why was I just so nasty? They were just in my way in the, you know, the shopping lane.
Well, yeah, that's definitely something that I've noticed. Even with meditation, I've been controlling my emotions a lot better. Yes. So when you're in those situations and you make those stupid, dumb mistakes, you're always dwelling on them because you know that you shouldn't have done it. And you're like, oh, like, why did I get so mad at that person? Now, I don't even get mad at anybody who, like, cuts me off or, like, is a jerk off. Like, oh, like, I held the door for you. Like, you didn't even say thank you. Or I helped you out and you didn't even say thanks. So, yeah, when I'm going over these things, I'm like, you know what? Maybe that person just haven't found themselves yet. They haven't found peace with themselves. They're just very angry. They're in a different place. And, you know, like, I hope they don't dwell on that mistake because that's what I used to do. I used to do, like, some stupid shit. Like, just dumb, like, little things that no one really cares about. Like, you know, not saying thank you because I was shy. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, oh, like, I should have said something. And now I, like, overcame that. I mean, I don't really think I have a mistake that I can't.
Haven't made peace
with. I can't get over. I really haven't done anything in my life where, like, I think every decision that I make is a good decision because that's what I wanted in the moment.
I think that we could say for us, not that it's a mistake that we haven't made peace with, but it's coping with our mistakes of, like, right now our parents are going through a divorce and we, as in you and I, are figuring out how to...
Who else is here?
My bad. Me, you, and the bunch of fucking bananas. I think that throughout our parents' divorce this time, we've made a lot of mistakes as a family. Like me, you, and Mom speaking to each other. But the amount of time that we've taken to come to terms with the mistakes that we've made, like yelling at each other, talking out against each other, getting angry with each other, upset with each other, lashing out at the wrong people. We have learned at this point that mistakes are inevitable and family is really tough. And there's a whole section of our family that we haven't been speaking to because things have went down so terribly. And the best thing for us is that as our small knit family, we can make mistakes in front of each other, but we can admit them, we can forgive each other for them, and we can move on. I think a huge problem for the part of our side that we're not speaking to is that they can't come to peace with mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes, but you need to own them. You need to be honest about them first.
Yeah. People are afraid to
People are
say,
very afraid to be honest.
Yeah,
be honest, and then you will start to. You can't see what I'm doing right now, but we, like Shrek would say, we're onions. You take layer by layer off, and you get deeper and deeper into your inner child. And you can start saying, it's okay that you made this mistake. But now we're growing and we're moving on.
Yeah.
And a lot of adults don't like to peel back those layers to get to their inner child that still makes mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
As we continue to grow as human beings, whether you're growing from 10 to 11 or 65 to 66, you need to be able to peel layers of yourself, face your inner child, which is something that you do in meditation. So if you don't meditate, you should start incorporating meditation. And then being able to say, inner child, it's okay. Outer me, I'm okay. You're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's figure out how to make you feel better so you can come to peace with that mistake.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly, that people don't open up about the mistakes. They just hold them back, and they don't talk about it either. They find it awkward talking to somebody about a mistake that they made.
Yeah.
And if you don't open up to that person, and you never make peace, or you never make peace with yourself, then you're never going to get to that point where you're like, oh, you know what? I feel a lot better. And I always go back to this. Like, I think about it. Whenever you hear about like a very embarrassing story, this is what like really put me over the top of like mistakes and stuff like that. When you go back to people who are like, yeah, I'm 40, and then they tell you about a story when they were like 15, they're like, oh yeah, it was 25 years ago. Like, I don't care about it anymore. And I think that's the thing. People want to hold on to like what they have done. And if I made a mistake, chances are I'm probably not going to remember it 2 weeks later. So why are you going to remember that mistake for 2 years instead of just letting it go after a while? It's just because it's psychologically, that's how we grew up. We grew up, oh, you were talking in class, I'm going to remember that.
There's
for
only two of us. Why am I raising my hand?
Yeah, like you were talking in class, you're going to get like a bad grade because we don't know how to tell you. There's a lot of things that I learned from. Yeah. Wait. Let me just get this last point.
Sorry.
So there's a lot of things that I've noticed when I'm getting older, and that when people do not explain to you why you need to do certain things, and they just say, this is what is happening because this is the rules, and I'm not explaining myself, that's when people go crazy and they make stupid mistakes, and they don't care. They're like, yo, you're not telling me, I'm going to keep doing it because that's just my nature.
So for us, our generation, we did not have this. I work in a school right now. I work in a middle school, which is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And they have something called a mood meter. And a mood meter goes from red to blue to green to yellow. And these amazing fucking kids, man, that are like being taught right now, they all talk about their feelings. They will literally come back from gym saying, I'm angry right now. I made a mistake. I argued with one of my friends and I am upset. Like, and they'll go to the mood meter and they'll pick out the words that are making them, that describe the feeling that they have inside. And what's so amazing about this mood meter, and it's called SEL, Social Emotional Learning, and I love this that they're doing in school.
Yeah.
Social Emotional Learning teaches the kids that you're allowed to have an emotion, which we were taught was a mistake. Mm-hmm. That our emotions are mistakes.
Yeah.
So that's why we carry these things for so many years, whereas my students today, something happens during the day to them, and we let them know. At 1:50, it's done, buddy.
It's done.
It's over. That school day is done. That mistake is totally behind you. We tell them that right after the period. Leave that mistake in period 3. This is period 4. You got a clean slate for period 4, man. You got this,
You know what's so crazy? When I was younger, I thought you could either have a good day or a bad day.
Like, there's no gray area.
There's no in between.
There is gray. Life has gray area. Anybody that tells you that it's yes and no and black and white doesn't understand the mind and the body. Because if you understood the mind and the body, you'd understand that things are complicated.
Yeah.
Things can be gray. Things can get confusing. And for us, things would get confusing when we would have emotions and get upset, because to us, the teacher's looking at us like, well, you got to shut the fuck up. I'm teaching, so stop having your emotion. That's a mistake. Be good.
Yeah.
So I look at my students now and I'm like, wow, you guys are so lucky that we give you the opportunity now to come in and say, hey, Miss Dan, I need to talk to you because I got a lot of emotions going on right now. I just made a mistake in the lunchroom or in the gym, wherever I was, and I need to talk about it because I need to come to terms with it. I need to come to peace. Like, they get that. These adorable 10, 11-year-olds understand that they need to come to peace with their mistakes. And I think raising our future generations that mistakes are life's beauty, that teach us to move on, that teach us that our mistakes make us who we are, because our mistakes shape us into the people that we become tomorrow. Let all that other shit go. Once that mistake has happened, all you can do is move forward.
Yeah, that's
Why
it.
wouldn't you?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is, man.
Yeah. And it's so crazy because what you're saying with emotions, how they make you seem like it's a mistake. Because when you get angry at somebody, especially, they're going through puberty.
Right. Like, middle school is a weird age, man.
Middle school and high school, too. Like, you're going through puberty that whole time. So you're just trying to figure out life at that point. Like, you're kind of getting it. You think you're, like, the shit at that point. You're like, yeah, bro, I know everything. And when they tell you, like, oh, you're being bad because you're showing emotion of anger towards somebody who just did something bad to you, but since this is a classroom, I'm just going to say, stop that, and then we're going to move on. Like, when you see that and you can't stick up for yourself, that's what really gets you. And when you can't,
and then
like,
you as a kid feel like you made a mistake because you didn't stand up for yourself.
Yeah, and then they don't promote talking about anything. Right. Now they do, obviously. So when it builds up inside of you, you just let everything. Yeah, you let everything out at some. Yeah, and you blow up. And I think that's probably the reason why so many people have anxiety, because once you start building up, it's just that's the rest of your life. If you can't figure out how to stop building it up, everything that you do. Oh, I screwed something up at work. Oh, that's going to be on my mind for 2 weeks because I can't go to my boss and be like, hey, sorry about that. Like,
to be honest with you, I think if we had social emotional learning, we would all be different young adults.
Probably.
Like, I look at me and my friends and I'm like, if we had social emotional learning in middle school, we would be very different people.
You wouldn't be like as crazy with your anxiety and depression at this point. You would still have it, but it would be a lot lower.
But also, like, I did tell my students, guys, if I would have had SEL in middle school, I would have understood that I had anxiety in high school. When I told my parents that I wanted to go to therapy, I felt like I was making a mistake. So I called my older cousin, who's 10 plus years older than me, I think 16 years older than me. And I called her and I said, you need to call my parents and you need to tell them that something's going on with me and we need to go out to dinner and you need to help me tell them that I want to go to therapy. So when I showed up to dinner, our dad thought I was pregnant at 14 because I made it such a big deal that I wanted to go to therapy, because in my head, anxiety was a mistake.
Yeah.
And I felt weird and not good. And for me, it felt more like a mistake, not an anxiety that wasn't a mistake, which I know now it's not a mistake. That's a normal everyday feeling. It can be. If I would have known that as a middle school child or a high school child, I would have been so much more able to express my feelings, not only to my friends and my peers, but also my family, you know? And that's something that helps you grow as a human being as you go on with mistakes. Boom. It's all connected.
Yeah, it's so crazy that you could connect so many different things, just the mistakes.
Just to mistakes. I mean, because at such a young age, I'll put it to you this way. What's one of the number one things that mom yelled at us for? Touching fucking dirt, bro. That is not an issue, okay? And I legitimately thought that dirt is like hot lava. You know, when you play with your friends and you're like, oh, don't touch the hot lava, you know? Like, mommy would always be like, oh my God, oh, no, gotta clean it, you know? Like, and to me, it was like, oh, well, dirt's a mistake. Letting kids go and play in the dirt is not a mistake. Letting them play with worms is not a mistake. But depending on where they grow up, whether they grow up in the woods or if they grow up like us in New York City, you don't play with dirt.
Yeah, I was talking to my suite mates with Tom and Nate, and Tom didn't have his shoes on, like, outside. And I was like, bro, that's so gross. And he's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, why are you so grossed out? Like, I'm just touching the floor. I'm just touching the earth.
Right.
Like, there's nothing weird about that.
At
and
this
I was
point
like,
in my life,
I was like, yo, you're right.
Yeah.
Like, why am I so grossed out that your feet are touching concrete?
I remember mom used to literally say that. She'd be like, oh, look, they're outside without their shoes on. Like, that's gross.
Yeah. And we would judge, like, Jersey kids.
Yeah, because Jersey kids always ran around without their shoes on.
Yeah.
But that was because they had, like, grass.
The
like
one thing
grass.
I will say is when you're at, like, a Sweet 16 or a wedding and girls don't have shoes on, I feel like that's a little gross.
I will say that it's gross only because I literally know of a girl who had a cut on her foot who got an infection from one of those parties. And I was like, dude, it's called a Band-Aid.
Yeah. No, but it is weird, though, because you're just set with these standards, and you think they're mistakes, but they're really not. They're just life lessons, and when you go through these life lessons and you become much better as a person, I think just me going through all these things, like, I figured out so much shit on my own in the past probably, like, 2-3 years, just because I'm more on my own and I'm doing a lot of shit by myself. It's a wonderful thing to grow as a person, and I think we're babied in a way. I think we're babied because with making mistakes, when you make mistakes and people are like, oh, that's good. I watched so many YouTube videos that they were like, mistakes are gonna happen, and I just kept replaying that over and over in my head and just watching so many videos. So when I hear somebody say, oh yeah, when I first started my own business, I wasted $20,000. And I opened up my second business, and I wasted another $20,000. But then my third business, it was kind of good. I profited a little bit, and I made so many mistakes with those first 3 businesses. And the only way to understand how to run a business is by keep doing it.
Yep.
And if you ever tell somebody, yeah, like I opened up a business and it failed, people look at you like, oh, like you're gonna try it again? You're crazy. Just go get a real job. Just go get something safer. And like that sticks with you. You're like, do I really do that? Like, are they right? Do they know more than me at this point? And it does mess with you because you have a goal. You want to do something, and when people limit you and they tell you, oh, that's not the right way, like you're messing up and stuff, it just holds some part in your brain to tell you.
You don't let it go. You don't make peace with it.
Yeah. And I've definitely made a lot of peace with it, just because I tell myself, like, hey, if this is what you want, this is your life. This is your life. This is your life. This is your life. Keep going with that. This is not their life. They have a life.
Yeah.
And guess what? They did what they did.
Exactly.
They're gonna tell you, like, hey,
they're gonna make
this is what I did. I love listening to people's stories, because I learned so much more from listening to stories than, I don't know, like researching about cancer.
Yeah. I mean, also just the life mistakes that you make. I mean, I definitely, living on your own will help you immensely see the mistakes that you can create on your own.
Yeah.
Life is a beautiful thing, and it's almost a beautiful thing that we have mistakes, Because if we didn't have mistakes,
it's a beautiful thing.
We wouldn't have the duality of life of the good with the bad. The duality of life is shown in every aspect. So to have those good parts, you gotta fuck up sometimes, and that's okay. You fuck up once, you fuck up 80,000 times. If I have a whole life and I'm gonna live to be a fucking old ass 100-year-old person, I'm gonna make countless mistakes that I'm not even gonna remember as the time goes
you make
on.
mistakes. Even like, oh, you bump your knee into it. That's a mistake, basically. Like, you're not supposed to bump your knee into a table, but nobody talks about that like anything crazy. Like, that's just something that happens. And, like, obviously, like, you could hurt your knee and stuff. Like, that's a little mistake that you do to your body that could eventually hurt you in the long run. But it's, like, that's something that people should bring up more than something else. I don't know where I was going with that. But,
Neither do I.
yeah, I don't know. I think that, like, we think of mistakes where, like, it's just failure. And it's not just failure.
No, mistakes are rarely ever just failure because, well, you know what? If you have a fixed mindset, then your mistake is always going to be failure. If you have a growth mindset, you're going to look at every mistake as a learning tool. And
I'm so glad that I kept this in. Because this is probably the worst thing I said on this podcast at the end.
Yeah.
But it's cool. You know, this is a mistake. That's literally a mistake. This is the first podcast of this series, my second podcast. Hopefully this one lasts a lot longer than the other one. I actually have a direction now, which is great. Having a plan and a direction is something that you always need in life. Because if you don't, then you're just going through the motions and you have no idea what's going to happen next.
I appreciate you bringing me on.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I just had to wake you up. That's really it. All right, so you want to hear the ending fact?
Oh, my God, yes.
This one's pretty good. The directors of the film Despicable Me actually wrote their own language for the Minions called Minionese. It looks like mayonnaise.
I'm dead. Say it like that. Mayonnaise.
Minionese.
Minionese.
Minionese, something like that. I don't know.
So funny.
It's pronounced Minini. Just in case you couldn't hear that, I did not say mini wrong. Onise. Minionese. I feel like I'm in a spelling bee right now.
I wish we could speak it.
Minionese?
Yeah.
We could probably learn it. We could learn it from the directors. We just got to reach out to them. Maybe they'll sponsor this. Brought to you by Minionese.
That would be amazing.
Well, thank you guys for listening to this first ever episode of Journal Prompts.
Mistakes are a beautiful thing. Journal away, my friends. Enjoy, enjoy.